A Day in Colonial Haiti by Philippe Girard. Narrated by Juliette Verveer. 5 p.m. The serial widow attends an execution. How can you even look at me with a straight face? The young woman asks as the man walks in front of her, gallantly cutting a path for her through the crowded street of 3 candlesticks. The woman is rushing to a public execution. She initially went to Cluny Square, a silly idea since it's market day and the place is a madhouse, until she realizes the men scheduled to be executed today are white. In keeping with new segregation rules, only blacks are executed on Cluny Square nowadays. Whites are instead executed in front of the Church of the Cape, on the parade grounds. Because of the mix-up, she's late, and she may miss the execution altogether. As if this were not enough, her male companion somehow decided that this was the right time to propose. Truly, men are a silly lot. I have had frequent occasions to observe your kind from up close, she tells the man. And you men are walking barometers, hovering between inconsequence, caprice, oddity, and dishonesty. The woman is not yet 30, but she fancies herself an expert in the foibles of men. Her last name is... what is it anyway? Over the course of 1 decade and 4 marriages, she has changed names so many times that she is having a hard time keeping track. The third husband's last name begins with a D. That much she knows. The man who just proposed is a captain of a slaving merchant named Daguet, so at least her initials would say the same. There are still several blocks away from the parade grounds, so Mrs. D might as well tell her suitor her life story on the way to the execution. She was 19 when she first married. Not to sound vain, but I was a rather appetizing brunette back then, she tells the captain with a pout. 2 men were fighting for her attentions at the time. One was a son of a planter. The other did not have much going for him, except for a good set of teeth. But he thought himself the most handsome of men, and he managed to convince me of it. She was young and dumb, so she chose looks over wealth. They consummated the marriage before it was even celebrated. During the engagement, she feared that her not-yet husband, having gotten what he wanted out of her, might look elsewhere. She should not have been concerned. I realized that I had no other rival but himself, as he loved himself too much to love anyone else. At any rate, the marriage didn't last long. After the groom fell sick during a business trip, she hurried to his bedside so that they could get married before he passed away. He left her widowed and penniless, with nothing to show for the rushed nuptials but a pregnancy that ended with a stillborn child. Mrs. D did not remain single for long. Her other suitor, the planter, resumed his courtship when he learned that she was back on the market. At least he had money. She wised up and said yes. The honeymoon period lasted just a few months. Her second husband turned out to be worse than a cheater. He was deathly afraid that she might be unfaithful to him. Suspicious of her every move, he kept her under close supervision on his plantation, where she raised their daughter in isolation. All that was missing was a lock and bars, she reminisces with a sigh. Thankfully, after 3 years of loveless matrimony, her second husband contracted smallpox. He died within a day, bitterly accusing her of planning an affair now that he was disfigured by the pox. A little boy runs straight into Mrs. D as she and her suitor are passing the corner of Pontiev and 3 candlesticks. The rascal disappears into the crowd before she can slap the keeper off his head. She barely had time to catch a glimpse of the boy's pockmarked face. She stops, realizing that she has gone 1 block too far, and takes a left turn towards the church and the parade grounds. Back to my story. That's for the second husband. Let's expedite the third, the one I regret the least, for reasons you'll understand easily. After 2 years of freedom, Mrs. D was attending a friend's wedding when she met a good-looking man. He was so smart and courted me so assiduously that he managed to convince me in just 3 months to take on chains again. The man had a bit of a reputation, but after her experiences with husband number 2, she thought it would be better to be jealous herself than to be married to a jealous man. He did not disappoint on that point. 2 weeks after my marriage, I found him with my servant, Mrs. D cries out. She got rid of the slave, but the next one lasted at most 3 weeks until my chaste husband was again caught in the act. One servant girl after another came and went until Mrs. D had a clever idea. She chose a male slave as her personal valet, along with a prepubescent black girl. But men are men. Within 6 months, the valet and the husband were fighting over the honor of deflowering the poor girl. Her third husband's tryst continued, both with servant girls who could hardly say no, and higher-born women who should have known better. The husband got so busy during a 5-month business trip that he returned home infected with a cocktail of venereal diseases. He died 6 weeks later. After completing her third mourning period, Mrs. D met another man. He was much older than her at 55, but he was also very respected. This is code for rich, as social status in the colony is closely correlated to wealth. The man was pleasant enough in society, though a bit old-fashioned. She married him, only to realize that he was just as uptight in private as he was in public. "What an insufferable pedant!" Mrs. D cries out. For 2 years, husband number 4 made her daily life miserable. He only had one weakness: gout. One day, a friend who dabbled in medicine sold him on some magical cure. The drug proved worse than useless, and killed him almost instantly. 4 buried husbands, and I'm not even 30! How can you even look at me with a straight face? There is indeed something alarming about a serial widow in a colony whose inhabitants are paranoid about poison. But a serial widow also comes with multiple inheritances, and marrying a well-endowed Creole bride is the quickest path to wealth for newcomers. So Captain de Gay proposed anyway, and Mrs. D found herself saddled with yet another suitor. First things first. Just as she's finishing her life story, she's finally reached the southwest corner of the parade grounds, where the execution is to take place. Somehow, the grounds are even more crowded than Cluny Square was. In the distance, above a sea of heads, Mrs. D can see the carriage carrying the condemned men from the church to the center of the plaza. Thank God, it's not over yet. Following a time-honored ritual, the condemned were initially brought from the prison on a carriage so that their sinful feet would not pollute the soil. Then they stopped by the church, in front of it, not inside of it, so they could make amends while carrying a heavy candle. After God's forgiveness comes the king's revenge. They are now on their way to their last stop, the scaffold. Mrs. D made it just in time for the good stuff. The condemned are pushed onto the scaffold, which stands on a high platform to indicate that the condemned are no longer part of the world of the living. On a more practical level, the crowd gets a better view. Executions are meant to be a teaching moment, so not only is Mrs. D welcome to attend, but her presence is essential. It is possible to carry out an execution without a criminal. When the condemned is still on the lam, the executioner simply kills the painting instead. But carrying out an execution without an audience is unthinkable. The execution today is a double-header. 2 French soldiers named Joseph and Antoine murdered a prominent white man in town. The sentence is death. Mrs. D is happy to see the men die. After various marriages to affluent men, she belongs to the upper echelons of colonial society, and she has no patience for the white riffraff teeming in this port city. White trash scum. Not everyone agrees with Mrs. D. The issue with poor people is that there are plenty of them, so the square is teeming with working-class whites who are unhappy to see 2 of their own die. Soldiers from the Regiment of the Cape stand guard around the scaffold, arms at the ready. But Mrs. D wonders whether that will do any good. Aren't the soldiers also lower class? I doubt they can be trusted to watch without fouling things up. Thankfully, armed men from the marechaussee are also present. Mrs. D normally doesn't care for this mixed-race militia. What a bright idea, Negro planters playing around with guns. But they are civilians, and they are not white. They are less likely to be moved by the plight of 2 French soldiers. Mrs. D also notices many black and brown faces around the square. To her left, she recognizes 2 slaves, one of them belonging to her hatmaker, and one belonging to her tailor. What are they doing here? Maybe they're happy to see white men being executed for once. Most executions are for rebellious slaves. 2 more faces emerge from the crowd and climb up to the scaffold. These are the executioners. Both of them are black, which is standard practice, and one is a woman, which is not. They do not wear a hood, as everyone knows who they are. Mrs. D has come to witness a particularly spectacular penalty imposed on murderers: the wheel. Here's how it normally happens. After tying the condemned man to a horizontal cross, face up, the executioner severs his right hand, the one that committed the crime. Then the executioner breaks various bones with a heavy iron bar, arms, forearms, thighs, pelvis, and calves, and hoists the broken ragdoll on a wheel, per the court's sentence, his face towards the sky, to remain as long as God will keep him alive. Sometimes the executioner is instructed to administer a coup de grace, and he ends the man's misery with a sharp blow to the chest. But if the authorities feel that the crime warrants extended suffering, or if the crowd is feeling particularly bloodthirsty that day, the condemned is left to die a slow, agonizing death. Not that I pity them. They had it coming. Here we go. The executioners are tying the two convicted soldiers to the crosses. Some criminals use this opportunity to make a last speech asking for divine forgiveness, or, alternately, defiantly denouncing the authorities. Not today. One of the soldiers merely says a few words to the judge, which Mrs. D can't hear from the distance. Damn it! If only I had come earlier and gotten a better spot! The judge climbs down from the scaffold and leaves the square. So does the officer of the regiment. The priest hears the men's confession and administers the last rites. Then he too steps aside. The execution can begin. This is the moment that Mrs. D has been waiting for. She stands completely still, her mouth wide open. The executioner raises the iron bar skyward. He keeps it up for several seconds, dramatically, while the entire crowd holds its breath. This is not Mrs. D's first execution, but for some reason she feels uneasy. Is it the unexpected marriage proposal? The palpable tension in the crowd? Or is it simply the unbearable afternoon heat? Another woman to her left is looking even worse. Must be the heat then. That woman is looking positively green. The executioner's bar comes down and smashes the right thigh of the soldier Joseph. The woman to the left lets out a deafening shriek when she hears the bone crack, then collapses. Lightweight. The people around the woman step back in surprise. A murmur ripples through the crowd from one end of the square to the other. Even the soldiers guarding the scaffold turn around. They seem unsure what to do as the crowd pushes closer. One of them pulls the trigger in a panic. Bang! The idiot! The first musket shot is accompanied by dozens of others as those dim-witted soldiers, thinking themselves under attack, open fire indiscriminately. Bullets whiz past Mrs. D. The two slaves standing next to her are hit and fall to the ground. A stampede ensues as people flee from the parade grounds. The executioners look around anxiously. Mrs. D knows why. Not long ago in the Cape, a previous executioner was lynched by the crowd after a botched hanging. Those two must have realized that they may be the ones dying today. The cowards drop their tools and run off to the safety of the prison. The two condemned men remain alone on the scaffold, still tied to the cross. Joseph is moaning and praying. No coup de grace for him. More moaning, this time right at Mrs. D's feet. Captain DeGay fell in the stampede and was trampled by the fleeing crowd. He looks badly injured. Well, there goes another one.
A note from the historian. This chapter is a composite of two real-life events. Mrs. D retraced her marital history in a January 1785 newspaper article that is a basis for this chapter's dialogue. Her ultimate fate is unknown. The execution and the riot took place a few years earlier in 1778. The slave of the hatmaker was shot dead while the slave of the tailor was wounded. Captain Daguet was injured, but he survived. After restoring order, authorities brought the executioners back to the scaffold and ordered them to finish the execution. This book is available on Amazon as an audiobook, a Kindle ebook, a paperback, and a hardback.